platform, which is a Skill India Digital Hub, popularly known as SIDH, which can be used to register caregivers, track certifications, and enable employer linkages. SIDH is a major governance reform providing a centralized information hub, and it's a single portal which provides for all skills, education, employment, entrepreneurship information. In addition to that, we also have a huge training network for short-term, long-term, as well as community trainings through our ITIs, NSPIs, our PM Kaushal Kendras, as well as NSDC training partners. And I've already mentioned the regulatory framework, which is there. But having said that we have existing care ecosystem, there are still a lot of challenges which are there. For instance, we have, as Pam had mentioned, the system is still very fragmented, and we have an informal workforce that operates without training or certifications, which results in low wages. There is no career progression, inconsistent quality of care. In addition to that, there is also variability in the training quality, so that we have very uneven trainer competencies. There are infrastructural gaps that are there, and very limited exposure. Because of the low awareness level and aspirational barriers, caregiver is not really perceived as a stable profession. There is lack of dignity, as ma'am had mentioned, and there is very low awareness on training opportunities, career pathways, and mobility channels. There is limited industry linkage, insufficient hands-on experience, which affects the job readiness, and limited partnerships with hospitals, care homes, care service providers, which are actually the takers for the caregivers. There is lack of standardization, especially across elderly care, disability, palliative care, wellness, and this is still evolving so far. There are also barriers to overseas mobility because we have absence of mutually recognized qualifications and insufficient language and cultural trainings, very weak pre-departure orientation modules, etc. Although the care economy is a high employment, high impact, future ready sector, however, because it is informal and unrecognized, there is need that we make it more certified and professional workforce is created, which gives them dignity and respect. So I'll just give a few indicative discussion points on which the panelists could develop and add on to any additional thoughts which they have on this. For example, some of the points which I would like to make is how do we develop a national caregiver training pathway, a roadmap for achieving the vision of skilling 1 lakh caregivers, which is indicated in the budget announcement, strengthening of trainers, assessors, training and creating a strong training infrastructure, and actually understanding the demand and supply opportunities as well as the challenges therein. We need to identify the key partners in building the roadmap for skilling caregivers, because a convergent approach is very important over here. Where all the stakeholders, they need to come together to take this forward, and also enabling global mobility through alignment and international standards. So having said the context for the panelists, I would now take it forward and request the panelists to express their thoughts. Once again, I would request each panelist to take about 5 to 6 minutes for expressing whatever thoughts they have on this subject. I will begin with Mr. Prashant Pise, who is Additional Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs. He's working on international cooperation and global mobility frameworks, and is also involved in strengthening safe and legal overseas employment pathways for Indian professionals. Ms. Pise, I would request you to share your thoughts on global mobility pathways for caregivers and strengthening safe international workforce migration frameworks for them. Mr. Pise.
Thank you very much. I hope I am audible now.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. This is, I think, you have set the ball rolling. You have given, I think, it's a very good outline what exactly is we are supposed to deal with. As far as AME is concerned, as you know, so we are dealing with bilateral as well as multilateral engagements to streamline the migrant flows and ensure migrant welfare. this is a very broad category, but caregivers is also one of the very prominent categories in this overall framework. As we know that when government of India has been encouraging the movement of skilled labor in search of new opportunities, there have been traditional markets like the GCC countries and English speaking countries, but I think slowly now this is being broad based and diversified to non-English speaking countries, especially to OECD countries. And as I think some of the points which you have raised, there are challenges. The one of the most, I would say, the critical challenge as far as OECD countries is concerned is basically the aging population, and they need increasing caregivers, as well as there is a growing demand for medical services, and how these this, numbers are being filled. This is, I think, a challenge, because there are some various markets, including India, Philippines, and even in our neighborhood, Sri Lanka also. And we are these one of the countries which is, in fact, competing with these labor markets. What is important, I think, is as far as healthcare givers and caregivers is concerned, is the definition of caregivers is, I think, still it is not very adequately defined. So there is a little bit of a lacuna there, because it's a very big cluster of caregivers. Either it is health caregivers, or so only the caregivers which have been working at residences, at care homes. And as you pointed out, there are various um, specializations like palliative care, or geriatric care, or some pediatric care. So these are these challenges, and our, I think, the uh, skilling has to gear up to that one, because it has to focus on those very specific areas if you really want to source our people into these specific areas. As you would be knowing, so we have various agreements. We have, in fact, three generations of agreements. We started with the labor welfare agreements, mostly focusing on the Gulf countries. So that was the very first market which we have been addressing. I think it has been very successful. The second market, I think, is the English speaking, mostly catering to North America. We have certain agreements, what we call is the labor mobility agreements. These are the second generation agreements. And now what we have come up with is the third generation, that is this MMPA. This is the mobility partnership agreements. These are the comprehensive mobility partnership agreements with various countries. We have about 9 countries. Recently, we have signed these agreements with the European Union as a bloc, as well as just last week we have signed an agreement with Finland also. Most of these countries, as you know, so they have a shortage of caregivers, and this is one area which have been, I think, we have to cater to their needs. But as I said, there are those certain challenges. It's not only the skilling, but the qualification, the skill recognition, and then how we are going to upskill them. And those are very particular skill set that are required. Another challenge is the language, because these are all non-English speaking countries, and we already have certain programs like Germany or Japan, but there are other emerging markets like Italy, or Denmark, or Finland. So we will have to cater to those markets with very specific needs, especially the language, the cultural awareness. So these are some of these thoughts I thought I should just share with you. So as you mentioned about the whole gamut of skilling, not only the core skills, but as well as the pre-departures training program, and then the culture awareness, the language programs. So these are again the needs which we'll have to cater to this particular market. Another aspect is the social security portability. That is one important aspect as far as these agreements go. So we generally cater to various markets as far as SSs are concerned, but not all the countries with which we have as the mobility partnerships also have the social security. So there are a little bit of gaps. So we have to focus on that aspect as well. The other aspect I would say is how you talked about dignity. So that is another important is the protection of the vulnerable categories. What we say is generally the women force, the domestic service workers. This is one category which is actually we feel that it's a vulnerable category, and we need to have the special provisions for them. In fact, there are certain countries, especially in the Gulf region, with which we have those specialized protocols in addition to the welfare agreements, such as what we call is the domestic service workers protection agreements. We have right now with 4 countries in the Gulf region, with Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, UAE, and we are negotiating with Oman as well as Qatar, because these are the countries with which we have traditionally a huge workforce which is being sent to these countries. And We have those safeguards placed especially for the women, that they have to be a minimum of 30 years age, and they have to go through our e-migrate portal. So these are the safeguards, so that we can monitor their some mobility, but at the same time there are certain lacuna, especially in some of the countries. They allow visitors visas, and people go on visitor visas, and especially they go for employment, but then they don't come under e-migrate, and then the overall ecosystem of caregiving industry. So they are outside that purview, and once they go there, if they have problem, then they approach the Indian missions or consulates, and that's how we come to know. So that is one loophole which we have to plug, but I think some of the GCC countries are very happy with that pathway, because it becomes very easy for them, and especially some of the countries like Philippines or Sri Lanka have put quite a lot of restrictions on that vulnerable category. So there is a tremendous demand, and especially through this informal channel, so that we have to cater to. Then specific, I think instances I can mention is Germany. That is a triple win program. I think that is very successful. It is being done on a pilot basis with Kerala, and what they call is a win-win-win situation for the migrant who is going for the destination country as well as for the source country. So it is, I think, very useful, and one can emulate this model. Another model is the global skill programming. That is also global skill programming of Germany. That is again a very, I think, a worthy model. So the Japan, I think, system is again a very niche kind of area where one has to focus on not only the skill but about the cultural awareness, and that's how I think we need to scale up our numbers, making sure that the requirements of Japanese market are taken into consideration. There are other markets like Italy, which has again demand for healthcare givers. We have some migration and mobility partnership agreement with Italy's, and we have a specific subgroup on healthcare givers. On European Union, again, we have recently signed a comprehensive mobility partnership agreement just a month and a half ago. So they also have some demand for high skilled as well as low skilled migration, and especially the caregiving system. We have as I think that Israel is one country in which B2B, P2P level, I think there is a lot of mobility is happening in caregiving industry, though it's very little on the G2G side. One very specific market is, I think, Denmark and Benelux countries as well as Switzerland, because these are the countries which are upcoming now, in terms of mobility partnership with us. The Denmark has already signed an agreement, and I think they are in touch with Ministry of Health for the JDI. They have very specific requirement, because I think there are those different definitions of healthcare helpers, healthcare assistants, nurses, professionals. So if you really want to tap the Danish market, we will have to cater to those very specific requirements, very specific skill sets that they have prescribed, because then again there's some, I think, criteria are quite different. What our nursing industry or nursing qualifications in India are, I think we need to have a little bit of skill and upskilling, so to say. Then, as I mentioned, the Benelux countries, that is another market which is going to come up very soon. That is Belgium, Luxembourg, and Netherlands. In another, I think, couple of months, we are going to sign an agreement. There will be a high-level visit to these countries. The Switzerland, that is again caregiving and nurses, so that's one very promising market. And as I said, so just last week we have signed an agreement with Finland. So Finland is also going to come up for this caregiving as well as nursing. So that is all from my side. Thank you.
I think very relevant points raised by you, particularly saying that while the demand is there in many new countries, we need to make our workforce ready to meet these demands, both in terms of soft skills as well as other required skill sets which are there, and particularly catering to the vulnerable section. Thank you very much for your comments. I next request Mr. Gyanen Dev Tripathi, who is Principal Secretary, Skill Employment and Entrepreneurship, Government of Assam. He is working overseeing skill development, employment generation, and entrepreneurship initiatives in Assam, and has worked extensively industry-linked skill training and improving employability of the youth in his state. I would request him to give the state's perspective on region-specific skilling strategies for developing the caregiving workforce. Mr. Tripathi, please.
Good morning, madam. Good morning, sirs. Am I audible?
Additional Secretary.
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much, ma'am. So when we talk about this role of states, we feel that states are the delivery engine of this initiative of 1.5 lakh caregivers. Most of the action will happen in the state. And as Prashant has already said, that when we see this sector, so there are very many broken pieces and lot of portability and intermobility issues need to be fixed, and we will have to work on them very, very closely. So caregiving, it should become a credible and aspirational option. In fact, I'll be suggesting some very simple 2-3 things which I discussed with our teams in the women and child department, in health department, in our own skill department. And those suggestions, if they are taken forward, perhaps we can do very good in skilling this. Assam can be a national and global care talent hub with young demographic advantage. In fact, for country it is 28 years, Assam it is 22.8 years. So we have a clear demographic advantage. And we can supply not only the domestic care services, but also the ethical global mobility pathways. If we solve certain small problems, that is the problem of quality, problem of this informalness, problem of learning language, as Prashant has very clearly pointed out. If we target certain countries where these demands are high, and employer linkages, and all these things are done at scale. So with this, we are Assam has so far done very good work in respect of skilling the caregivers, and it was the opportunity given by the COVID not only to Assam but most of the states, and there Assam trained around 12,000 caregivers in the mission to COVID frontline worker mission, and the resources were used from the PMKVY 2.0 and 3.0. Under PMKVY 4.0, Assam has skilled around 2,400 youth in job roles like emergency medical technician, geriatric caregiver, institutional and home care. Further, under state-sponsored scheme, one role that is the home health AD, and that particular role also has been tried with state funding, and that has led to very good quality placement rates. So with these experiences, what we see that when we have opportunity of this 1.5 lakh caregiver training, two very important caregiver ecosystem which comes to our mind, that is the ASHA workers as well as the Anganwadi workers. Can we use this as a platform of mobility? In fact, instead of taking brand new people and training them and sending them to other countries, if we use these ASHA workers as well as Anganwadi workers, and they become the platform, we make them learn the language, also recognize their skills through our HMCG Sector Skill Council, and make it mandatory for the future ASHAs and future Anganwadi workers to have these NSQF aligned Sector Skill Council provided courses as entry level qualification. If we do these three things, then what will happen, that the job role will become very aspirational in nature. In fact, the ASHAs and Anganwadi workers will not only be trained in the NSQF aligned thing, but also it will give them aspiration that if they do well and they learn the skills, they have chances to go to other countries and earn more remuneration for them. So this way we can make this aspirational. The second suggestion which we are giving is, can we make foreign language mandatory for all the nursing colleges? In fact, in nursing colleges, whenever the nurses are being taught, whether it is a GNM course or the BSc nursing course, we can make the learning of the foreign language as one of the mandatory courses, so that we do not need to run these courses separately, because when we run it at separately, it becomes very difficult to scale it up. But if we make them mainstreamed into the colleges and schools, it becomes very, very important. So taking these things, Assam has taken a kind of mission for 2026-27, and though we are going to election, post-election our budget will be presented, but we have around 25,000 such people, these ASHA workers, Anganwadi workers and nurses. We will train them in the foreign language skills, so that the problem of this international mobility is also taken care of, and the skilling in caregiving sector becomes a kind of aspirational in nature. The third thing which we are suggesting, that Assam has developed large number of medical colleges over period of time. At present, 14 medical colleges are already operational, and the target is that every district there should be a medical college. So 23 medical colleges means 9 more are in pipeline. So once we have medical colleges at such large scale, these medical colleges can become a very good training service providers. Instead of opening new training institutions, these medical colleges can become a very good training provider for the caregivers. So these are the three suggestions which we wanted to make. Since there are time constraints, I would not like to speak much. Thank you very much, ma'am, and these suggestions may be taken into account.
Thank you, Mr. Tripathi. Some very valuable suggestions coming from the experience of Assam on how to make the caregiving sector more aspirational through formal trainings, language courses, etc., and how medical colleges could be used as TPs for the caregivers. Thank you very much. I'm sure that this could be taken forward in other, not only in the northeastern states, but in other states as well. I would now request Mr. Jagdish Tirani, Executive Director, Meghalaya State Skill Development Society, This is the nodal agency implementing skill development initiatives in Meghalaya. Mr. Chelani works closely with training partners and industry stakeholders to enhance employability and livelihood opportunities for the youth. I would request you, Mr. Chelani, to share your experience on state-led models and partnerships with healthcare institutions for caregiver skilling and give your suggestions for the sector. Mr. Chelani, please.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for giving me the opportunity. At the outset, I really would like to thank the ministry for giving me the opportunity to be part of such panel of experts. Uh, what I would like to share my thoughts would be, I like to model it in two phases, ma'am. First is regarding the overall caregiving skill development that we are doing, and the program. The second would be the program that we have for international caregivers in particular. So, in general, ma'am, we have onboarded many of the institutions which are already into the nursing, as nursing colleges and institution itself, for giving us their contact of their alumni network, as well as being one of the TPPs, the training and placement partners for us. So, with their expertise, the NSQF curriculum itself, because many of these programs are being funded by the state, in addition of the funding from the ADB funded project here in Meghalaya. So, we have actually remodeled a lot of the NSQF programs to focus more on the aspects which are probably missing in some of the programs of their existing nursing colleges, and giving that additional gap training in these aspects. Because the funding has completely come from the state, so that had the flexibility. The certification is also done through the state level itself. Uh, in international caregiving, what we observe, ma'am, some of the important aspects. Sorry, in caregiving in general, what we observe, ma'am, some of the important aspects are the most of the businesses. So today, MSSDS has started being modeled from a skilling development institute, now being a skill development and placement institute as well. While we have ventured into this, what we have observed is that many requests have primarily come from geriatric care and child care specifically, which they require a little more better people than the GDAs, but not as good as nurses itself. Nurses being on the higher end of the spectrum of economy for them. So on an average, in India, everybody is ready to pay about 15,000 rupees for geriatric care and child care in general, whereas nurses are not ready to go at that cost. So an easy gap to fill was to actually train the GDAs with an orientation towards a nursing kind of a course, or with an orientation towards a more caregiving aspect, which has actually helped us to put in a lot of gaps from this sector. In fact, today in Assam, some of the IS officers today have the caregivers that have come from Meghalaya through their personal requests. And we are trying to now model it as a national model itself, where then Meghalaya becomes one of the place where we have professionals which can be sent nationally and be able to provide these services at their home itself. We have already modeled it. We have already started the pilot phase within Delhi and Assam itself, apart from being in Meghalaya with one of our training and placement partners. And I'm sure, ma'am, that over a period of time, we'll be having about 1,000 people across India in this very next year, which is coming up. Now, this was for people who do not want to leave the country and wanted to have that comfort of being in the country itself. For international caregiving, as Sir has very well, as Principal Secretary Sir has very well highlighted from Assam as well, the Northeast in general has the median age as very, very much lower than the national average. While India has 28.1, we have less than Assam itself at 22. So we are one of the youngest populations in the country, and national and internationally as well. Countries like Japan, which have a median age of 48, is a much senior and much older country than us. Now, second, ma'am, we also saw the spectrum of which countries have the requirement of manpower, specifically countries like Japan and wages basis. So, for example, in New Zealand, like country will probably be able to easily pay 5 lakh rupees within 6 months to a person from Indian origin, but a person from New Zealand origin itself will find it very difficult to get that wage. Well, it will be on the lower side for them. So that wage disparity in different countries also gave us a good opportunity of looking at which countries are potential good countries for us. Apart from the regular options of GCC countries and the European countries. So now each of these countries, we had a different approach, ma'am. for example, for the eastern part of the country, what we saw Kerala doing in GCC is what today Meghalaya wants to do it in Japan as of now. So in Japan, we had very good factors. Today we have very similar looking people. We have very similar looking cuisines. We have very similar looking housing and infrastructure over here, along with the cleanliness that Japan has. So most of our partners that have come from Japan, partners like Asian One Foundation, which is also working with Assam now, but also partners like Navis, partners like JASIX, all of these training and placement partners who are doing the language training for us have also highlighted the comfort that not just people from Meghalaya have for Japan or for Southeast Asian and other countries, but also for them to be comfortable with our people over there. The culture is much more better and more similar. They had actually tried the nurses from Kerala as well, but they found the accent to be much more stronger, much more heavier. And that kind of gave them a good opportunity of exploring this option in the Northeast, and Assam and Meghalaya being one of the major partners for most of the training and placement partners. Meghalaya also has a very strong culture of nursing and caregiving in itself as a state. Uh, so it goes on to further strengthen the USP that Meghalaya provides in the countries like Japan and South Korea for them to have this. As a state, what we are looking at is the remuneration that comes from them, the return that they send to their families. It's to the tune of 80,000 rupees a month after savings, taxes, and their accommodation and fooding expenditures. And this 80,000 over a period of 3 years for 1,000 people is a good amount of sum for Meghalaya as a state to have a remittance for. So in this regard, ma'am, few steps that we have taken for international caregiving specifically for a country like Japan, and we also have similar steps for Germany, for European, as Sir has said about Benelux countries, about some of these other countries as well. What we have done is,
Not in the next 1 minute. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, ma'am. Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe
Yeah,
you said
because-
I should wrap up within the next 1 minute.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
done, ma'am. For sure. So now for caregiving in general, and for placement in the international sphere in general and caregiving in particular, this entire story started with caregiving, international caregivers. What we have done as a state is we have started giving 50,000 flat grant to anybody who's going international for any country. And we also have a skill loan up to 10 lakh rupees for them to get language training and or anything that they require. They can buy their tickets, they can put their visas, they can do the test with this money. That 50,000 grant is flat. The 10 lakh rupees loan upper limit is also there. And we don't ask them the question whether you're eligible or not. If you're qualifying for the examinations, you can easily go for any country. For the partners that we have also now initiated a free language course within Shillong. This should soon be replicated in 2 other cities of this state. This is free for all. Anybody who wants to learn the language. You don't have to go internationally to get a job for being part of this course. If you just want to learn German language or Japanese language, today in Meghalaya you have a free of cost course where you can go and get the training on this. And lastly, ma'am, we have more than 10 international placement partners which are able to put in caregivers across the globe as of today. Only the Americas are the 2 continents that are Americas and Africa is the continent that is left probably, but Europe, part of Asia, Australia, and much of the wealthier countries is a network that we are easily touching as of today. We today have 60 nurses which are working in Japan, about 10 nurses which are working in Singapore. This was the very first phase. This year alone, we are hoping on a positive target of about 350 nurses to be placed internationally. And on the caregiving setup, ma'am, we have about 700 people which are working as of today in the domestic caregiver network across the country. We have 217 Cloud9 hospitality chain itself, which has come last 6 months. And we are hopeful that in this coming year, we'll have about 1,500 nurses and caregivers which will be there in this sector very, very shortly, ma'am. So that's all. And a wonderful suggestion by Principal Secretary of tapping into the Asha and Anganwadi network is something that we are looking into right now. And hopefully we'll be able to convert those into very positive resources going forward. We have kept our target of 1 village, 1 person who should be trained in a course of international orientation. And we are going beyond the caregiver for multiple projects. That's all from my side, ma'am. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. I hand it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chanani. It's quite encouraging to know that the median age in Meghalaya is much lower than national average, and your demand, for example, having similar cultural basis as in Japan, so that the country which is taking the caregivers is comfortable, as well as the caregivers are comfortable settling over there. So that's a very good approach. Thank you for your comments. I would now request Ms. Mia Oka, Country Director, ADB. She's leading the ADB's operations and partnerships to support inclusive and sustainable development, and also oversees programs focused on infrastructure, human capital development, climate resilience, and strengthening social systems.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you so much for the opportunity to join this important discussion. This conversation is very timely. Across the world, the demand for care services is rising rapidly due to aging populations, increasing chronic diseases, and changing family structures. And as we know, the WHO estimates that the global health workforce, nurses and caregivers. For India, strengthening the care economy is also about advancing the vision of Viksit Bharat, creating jobs, expanding women's participation in the workforce, and investing in human capital. India already has to remain below global benchmarks. This highlights both the scale of opportunity and the need for continued investment in workforce development. Looking ahead, I would like to recommend three priorities that can be critical to scale India's caregiving workforce and support India's goal of training. Caregiving must be treated as a profession with clear standards and certification for nurses, certified caregivers, and aligned health professionals at the global level, while ensuring dignity, worker protection, and ethical employment practices. And second, building a training ecosystem that delivers practical skills. The importance here is the practical skills. The training cannot rely only on medical colleges. It requires a broader ecosystem of teaching hospitals, skill institutions, and care providers that can deliver stronger market demand. Training programs must be aligned with actual labor market requirement, particularly language skills and qualifications and employment conditions. As colleagues from Meghalaya mentioned, while helping state, I believe they have to focus on a few priority destination countries rather than spreading training system too thin. As we mark 40 years of partnership between ADB and India, we remain deeply committed to supporting the country's skilling ecosystem. Since 2013, ADB has invested more than 2.5 billion in skill development programs. We are willing to support and deepen the expansion of medical education and training infrastructure in states such as Maharashtra and Assam, strengthening allied health training in Tamil Nadu, and supporting early childhood development and caregiver training in Meghalaya. Looking ahead, building a sustainable care economy will require strong collaboration between governments, industry, training institution, and international partner. But I think it's more important to talk about the cross-sector to support India through policy dialogue, connecting other development partners, financing, and technical assistance. As we demonstrate through programs such as PM Setu, ADB also brings strong experience in mobilizing private sector partners in the industry to strengthen training system and expand employment pathways for giving workforce. I stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Oka, for very clear three priorities which you listed out. Thank you once again. British Asian Trust. He leads the operations in British Asian Trust, overseeing programs across education and livelihoods. And I would request you, sir, to touch upon the financing frameworks and innovative partnerships to expand access to caregivers and allied training and mobility opportunities.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Vishweshwar.
Here, of course, of the announcement that happened in the budget and for the Prime Minister's visionary remarks. So a real honor to join this convening today. There are three main points that I wanted to submit for the consideration of the group. The first is, and I've been asked to talk about financing frameworks within the UK, but also in other parts of the world increasingly. And based on their inputs, we picked up this area of innovative financing as the area that we wanted to focus on. Because we saw that when it comes to financing programs like this, often the constraint that we have is where are we going to find adequate financing? And also, how do we make sure that the financing that is going into a program like this is actually delivering the results that we want? And therefore, we innovated this area that we call outcomes-based financing. And so my first recommendation would be that this area be considered for a program of this nature. Essentially, what outcomes-based financing does is it ties the provision of financing to the actual of the outcome will need to be done effectively. But this would then make sure that, for example, if the outcome that we are after is that industry absorbs a certain person who has been provided a skill, then that means that the industry is essentially certifying the quality of that, the quality of the skilling that has been provided is adequate. So that then provides a framework for the provision of financing in the sector, which can make sure that outcomes are actually achieved, and we are not just providing sort of certificates for the sake of it. So that's the first with the National Skill Development Corporation in this program called the Skill Impact Bond. So an impact bond is one of the instruments that can be used under an outcomes-based financing framework. And this has successfully provided skills for about 50,000 people, including about 60% women. And that example of how an instrument like this has been successfully used to actually sort of deliver a national scale program. And then the third point I'd like to make is that when we think of this specific sector around care, so for example, when we think about how 1.5 lakh caregivers are actually going to be professionally employed, to the point that has already been made of thinking of professional employment avenues and openings, this would mean almost the creation of an industry to absorb all of the caregivers that are being skilled, because otherwise the employment will stand the risk of being very informal. Now, if we are thinking along those lines, who is going to pay the provider, who is then going to employ the caregiver? Right? So this is something, again, that we have started thinking about in the context of creches and caregiving for younger children. And there we think that, again, outcomes-based financing or blended finance has a real role to play to a caregiver. How much is it that an industry might be willing to pay because they are then able to employ the woman whose child is being cared for, and therefore she can go to work. And therefore, how much of a gap remains for philanthropy or the government to step in and what do different actors in the system need to do to be able to make an industry come alive. And so again, this is something where outcomes-based financing or blended financing can play a key role. So I'll stop with that. And once again, thank you for inviting us to this convening, and I hope that this has been helpful.
Thank you very much for this very, very important that we switch to now outcome-oriented financing, now outcome-based financing, where we link the financing to specific skilling outcomes which are there. The second important point which you raised, which is very, very relevant, is when we are creating 1.5 lakh additional caregivers, where do we place them? So we now need to work on the demand supply. Now turn to Ms. Georgia Beresco, who is the Chief of Youth and Adolescent Development in UNICEF. And she has 2 decades of experience in youth development, education, and partnerships across several countries, and has worked extensively on youth employability and education transition. So, ma'am, I would request your global perspectives and partnerships for strength.
Very illustrious Fiji and this team leaders. It's great to be part of this webinar today. By transforming India's care economy, we have once-in-a-generation opportunity to respond simultaneously to demographic change, create large-scale employment for young people and especially women, and position India as a global hub for skilled care professionals. System and train 1.5 lakh into skilled caregivers in the coming year. It's more than a skills initiative. It's recognition that care work is legitimate, skilled employment that can drive women's economic empowerment and upward income mobility. Formalizing the care economy creates a double dividend. First, it transforms unpaid care work into dignified, paid employment for millions of women. And second, by expanding reliable care services, in that perspective, expanding quality childcare does even more. It strengthens women's ability to work and provides children with a nurturing care and early learning experiences that are foundational for their development. This makes investment in childcare a win-win for families and for the economy. Some of the guests earlier already mentioned some important statistics that I also was reflecting upon. Most importantly, that there will be a shortage of 10 million health workers by 2030, care professionals. And domestically, India's elderly population will reach 230 million by 2036, a significant 15% of the population. This, coupled with the fact that families are also, there is also an increase, according to the Census of India, that households will become increasingly more nuclear families. These shifts do create a growing what is called the care deficit, a structural gap that requires professional, skilled caregivers, therefore requiring doubling the investment in the care economy, which could lead, according to the ILO, to a total of 475 million jobs by 2030. Millions of women in India are already engaged in care responsibility, many with decades of experience but lack formal recognition. So through recognition of prior learning, this experiential knowledge can be converted into certified qualifications, creating pathways from informal to formal employment, higher wages, and upward mobility. However, when women do enter formal care work, often face a double burden of professional care work and during the day and the unpaid care work at home. So formalization must therefore include fair wages, reasonable working hours, and portable social protection. At UNICEF Yuva, our focus has been also on connecting women from. So to maximize the opportunity created by the budget, we have identified 5 critical actions. The first 2 are aligned with what my colleague in the ADB also suggested. The first is really looking at the professionalization of the workforce. It's important to ensure quality, safety, and standardized competencies, further strengthening clear career ladders, so to transform care from informal low-paid work into recognized profession with career progression and further upward mobility. We also, again, here we're also focusing in ITIs, training institutions, private care providers for apprenticeships and on-the-job training and placement pathway from the onset. Similarly, at Yuva, similar pathway will be designed from the onset with employment as a clear outcome. Third, the importance of ensuring dignity, protection, and safe working conditions, including maternity benefits. We look things from a life, so the life out to care for siblings and relatives, we lose the future economic potential. So community-based care programs through, for example, initiatives such as the. And the last point is around mainstreaming disability support. According to the census, 27 million Indians are living with disability, training in assistive technology and rehabilitation, which is creating an entirely new employment vertical. We also, similar to what the ADB colleague are not trained in isolation, but are embedded within a coherent national care architecture. One of the earlier speakers, by aligning training with international standards, ensuring ethical, safe pathway for women who choose to migrate, whilst also strengthening the domestic care sector to provide dignified as most inclusive employment engine, creating jobs for millions of women, enabling other women to work and addressing a critical societal need. A professional that is respected, well compensated, which is the care force that will drive both economic growth and gender equality.
Very important and relevant points raised. Once we have that question about the deficit in the care workers ecosystem by countries like India, which have a lot of workforce available, but key core and social protection which should be available for the caregivers, and employment should come as a clear outcome in this regard. And the most important point being that we need convergence both at the lateral as well as horizontal level between ministries and between the center and the states, so that we could take it forward. Thank you very much, ma'am. University Government of Gujarat. Professor Singh is a distinguished academician and administrator with over 34 years of experience. He's a Fulbright fellow, and he has been instrumental in advancing skill-based higher education models in India. Professor Singh, I would request you to make your suggestions on how to integrate higher education with multi-skilling.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for giving me a chance to be a panelist. To allow divide my 6-minute deliberation into 2 parts, 1 or 2 minutes for what we started doing for caregivers. We started working on that with the health department, and we have signed MOU and affiliated one institution, which is Indian Red Cross Society. They have wished to start the caregiving programs from this year only in 2026, maybe April, we will start the programs in good numbers. That is one, as well as nationally, and therefore we started. Another, that with the health department, with government of Gujarat, we are going to launch 2 pilot projects. That the 2 pilot projects, and maybe later on, all the government hospitals will have this kind of programs when the pilot will become successful. So secondly, as the institution Kaushalya, the Skill University, we have committed to do any kind of training with the industry partners only. So we are in the name of other institutions, and therefore whenever we affiliate or do anything, we will be doing it with the 3 years along different discipline and skilling. We have trained many people from steel technology to furniture manufacturing and design. The issue is where I am also going with the ma'am, and she said that good quality, dignity of work. I'll take clue from there, ma'am, and good quality, and definitely that will be possible when we have dignity of work as well as aspiration for this profession. So I will another 5 caregivers and how we can make. So in that context, what I have tried to understand and read and developed in last few 10, I mean, catch them young is the first thing. I mean, we have to catch the people who are aspiring to become maybe nurses. So we have to catch them maximum young, because when we will catch them young, the quality will certainly improve. That is one. Number 2, how to catch them young. 7th, 8th students, more in number, are being given exposure for skill education in the healthcare sector. And especially there are clusters of different kind of skilling. So caregiving clusters are also there. That is, initially it was Kerala and surrounding areas. Caregivers, nurses and midwives is very, very important to identify. And in those clusters, we have to identify which cluster is more suitable. In some state, they want whatever to be done in their own state of the country. So we have to culturally see what is required. That is another aspect. So important, which is the question to me, the pathways for scaling higher. So if any student join in after class 10th or maybe certificate to 4 level of NSQF or NCRF, they should be getting that credits in their academic bank of credits and ST credits at different forums at different level, and especially physics, chemistry, maths, or maybe biology. That is more important. If biology can be integrated, they can be getting that kind of knowledge so that they become equivalent to class 12th biology, and they will be eligible for GN admissions. Probably can work on that if required. So, and I have a lot of exercise how to build so that the load should not be academic bank of credit. We can ask the student to do 1 year certificate course in X, 2 years diploma course in Y, and maybe 3 years or 4 years BSc or post basic and later courses. So if that track can be developed thoroughly, I am very sure that more students, if catch young, they will come to aspire to work, and the economic condition at their own places or maybe family conditions are not that good. So 18,000 official stage after 10th, and Apprenticeship Act is also in place. Altogether, if we can bring a whole ecosystem, I think we will be able to not only reach probably 2050, we will be having 347 million old people. Also, we require a lot of people for this. What I reflect as on now, and I think in all these things, the credit system, NSQF, NCRF, NEP together, and making skill education aspiration, that is possible. And I think we will be able to fulfill the demand of the world also, because 11.5% of the total global economy right now has been covered by three contribute in the direction of becoming the skill capital of the world. So I'll stop here. If I have not taken more time, I tried to be on time. Thank you very much again for giving me a chance. And I'm very...
Thank you, Professor Singh. I will now call upon Dr. Srinivas Rao Pudijana from he's CEO Apollo MedSkills Limited. I would request your suggestions on scaling training infrastructure and delivery systems to meet the national target of
skill development for inviting us to this important national dialogue. And thanks to the commitment given by the Government of India for building the current ecosystem, training ecosystem for aged care, and what are the critical gaps that we see needs to the entire aged care training ecosystem, and saw where the infrastructure for training is. Currently, it is spread across three health. So with first talking about the Ministry of Social Justice, I think National Institute of Social Defense, they currently run programs, but we need to leverage that infrastructure. The second is in the Ministry of Justice special scheme with 4 NSQF job roles. And I think in the last 2 years, each year we have trained close to 35,000 caregivers. So to be more precise, 36,785 in the last year. Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Kendras, there are 714 PMKKs across 707 districts now. And healthcare is one of the major sectors, but there is also a domestic worker or home management and caregiver sector skill council. Between them, they're close to 714 Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Kendras. And there are specific training institutes. There is also a digital ecosystem for the training, which is Tapas platform by National Institute of Social Defense again. There are close to 700 government-supported care homes, which can be used as on-job training infrastructure now. And there are 3,000 nursing institutes which are approved by Indian Nursing Council, which are under the Ministry of Health. And similarly, there are state skill development missions which have got their own training institutes. So this is the existing infrastructure that we have. But looking at some of the critical gaps here, today less than 500 certified geriatric trainers are there nationally across all the sector skill councils, healthcare as well as the caregiving sector skill councils. So when we analyzed how many, so 4,500 will be an optimal number, but 3,000 is a minimum number that we need to critically build with an urgency. So the trainer programs should be built immediately to build these next 3 months to get these 3,000 trainers on board. Then geographical reach, if we see so far 17 states have been covered with PM special scheme on geriatric caregiving between the rural and urban India now. So that needs to be addressed as well. So we need to see the areas. The reason I specifically mentioned this because we also looked at the number of senior citizens living in the rural areas. So 71% of India's elderly are living in rural areas. They are very far from medical infrastructure. Similarly, there is another, and almost with a very minimal income. So I think looking at this, I think the rural disparity of geography has to be addressed. Coming to the recommendations, I think one is building the trainer profile. Second is addressing this geographic gap. Third is to train this the skill lab infrastructure. I think the clinical simulation labs for the geriatric skill lab infrastructure for the aged care training across India. And also we need to leverage the ITIs. There are close to 700 ITIs which are healthcare capable. So I think enabling that and leveraging that infrastructure is also useful. And we also looked at the various curricula that exist today, both with Healthcare Sector Skill Council and the home end of life care. Companionship, elderly companionship is another very important area for the senior citizens who do not. So there is a state level disparity as well as we see in the last 3 years. I think Madhya Pradesh has been trained most number of caregivers in India, followed by UP, and Telangana has got at least training numbers as of now. So I think this also needs to be addressed. And the QA quality assurance, we can leverage platforms like eSanjeevani. It's kind of a dead-end career for most of the caregivers, but I think both the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Skills, Ministry of Education, Ministry of HRD needs to discuss and build a vertical pathway for these caregivers. And final point that I want to mention before I close, it's very important to build a national registry for caregivers, because it is good for safety and security. It's very important to build that, maybe through an RPL route. And it also gives a good dignity to the caregivers. They have a registration number, both for the security of senior citizens and also for the dignity of caregivers. So here I end my views. Thank you for the opportunity, and looking forward to hear more views now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Polijana, for Portia Medical. He's a serial entrepreneur and startup mentor with over 3 decades of experience building successful ventures, including Tutor, Vista, and Marketers. He's currently leads Portia Medical, one of India's leading home healthcare service providers. Mr. Ganesh, I would request you to give the industry's perspective on caregiver and allied workforce demand and strengthening industry training. Mr. Ganesh, are you there? Come back.
He's not.
Sodexo India. Yes, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, ma'am, for giving me this opportunity to cover. I have what I have seen that there are solutions to the problems which the industry is facing. So many people have come with the right suggestions, and there are infrastructure which is already available. However, if I look at it from an industry perspective, first of all, Sodexo is in the caregiving economy. Sodexo other parts of the world. We are not very big in this country at this point of time, but there are allied services which we are already into. Our clients are majorly corporates, hospitals, schools, and so they have a large demand for caregivers as an extension of our service. One which associates for the hospitals. So I'll talk about what we are facing as a challenge, and then what I've got lots of valuable suggestions which we'll explore. We'll partner with some of the people to get solution. But the way we look at it as an opportunity is, see, we have around 60,000 people. Services very effectively is the caregiving business, because we do lack manpower. If I talk about the domestic market, because majority of the people are talking about the global market, where the aspiration is high because of emerging trends. One, there is a huge amount of high net worth individuals who are looking for caregivers for their parents, their children, and their neurodiverse children, or anybody who is a neurodiverse person. So that is one market where we can make good money. Any caregiver can make good money if he or she is of the right quality. So I'll come to the quality, how we can do. Then there is a middle class market wherein both husband and wife are going to work, and they need somebody to take care of their parents. Institutional service providers like us, there is a huge scope for creating gig workers in the caregiving economy, which we can think of and get organized. And then, of course, I think Dr. Singh and somebody else also talked about, our friend from Apollo talked about the rural area where the capacity to pay may not be there. So there are institutions which we need to take care of, but definitely there is a need for caregivers. Now, coming to quality, definitely everybody has talked about creating the right kind of awareness, but what I feel is we need to start with, we are by nature are having service attitude. So that one attitude which we are looking for is there. Uh, so can we start at a very democratized price, a tool which does the assessment at class 10, whether you are fit for this or not. So starting the expectation from there that, okay, I'm fit for this industry, and then there is a huge growth opportunity, which can be gradual, but there is a path which we can think of. So assessing them, then putting them into the right channel of training and placement. And of course, as Dr. Singh talked about, bringing them back to the academics for upskilling with you already have some academic credit accumulated. So that is going to create an aspiration, and that there only they will see a value. Are coming from the same pool from where a housekeeper is coming, from where a GDA is coming. And unfortunately, one part which one of the interministerial team must take care of is we are training everybody, we are skilling everybody. But after the skilling also, most of the jobs which are enlisted in the schedule as per the minimum wage acts are unskilled jobs. Even if you become a training, but you land up in a job which has been classified by the Ministry of Labor, not only by the states, even in the skilled, and you land up in the workplace where you are being treated as an unskilled, you are being paid as an unskilled, is something which we need to look at. Because that, if we don't look at that, it is not going to create the aspiration. There are people who are graduates. In fact, many of them are BTechs. I'll take one more minute. Yeah.
Yeah. Please wrap up in the next 30 seconds, huh?
30 seconds, yeah. So, ma'am, so I was telling that the aspiration to be generated through these institutionalized methods is what I would press upon, because most of the points which I wanted to share is already covered. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Sandeep ji. I'm just sorry that we are constrained for time, and I'm having to, ask panelists to sort of confine themselves to the 5 to 6 minutes that we spoke about, so that we can get everybody's suggestions. So for the next panelist, please 5 to 6 minutes is just try to confine yourself to that. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. This is K. Ganesh here. Sorry, I couldn't join earlier. Can all of you hear and see me?
Yes,
Yes.
please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. So India really has a structural care deficit, right? By 2036, if you see a workforce, which I'm promoter of Portia Medical, India's largest home healthcare companies from a vantage point of view, the caregiver workforce is largely, it's informal, it's underpaid, and really invisible to the formal economy. Okay, right? And we see this daily at Portia. Every time a family in a tier 2 city calls us for, say, post-surgery or a geriatric patient needs daily skilled caregivers, it's not just a skilling program. The way I see it is, it's a way to formalize an entire sector that has been operating on trust, desperation, and informal referrals. Okay, right? So my perspective today, I'm going to talk about in the next 5 minutes, really comes from 3 different positions. One, as an employer in Portia Medical who hires these caregivers. 2, I'm on the board and a shareholder in the Home Management and Caregiver Sector Skill Council, where which set the standards for this workforce. And also I have the third hat I wear is a trustee of a Bihar Foundation, which is a not-for-profit, where we train women at the village level. So what is really the challenge? The program to produce not just certificate caregivers, unless we have a very strong on-the-job training program that's structured, right? We already, the Sector Skill Council already has QPs for elderly caretaker, which is non-clinical general duty assistant roles at NSQ 3 and 4. But what is missing here is the employer sign-on for assessment and absorption. We need to bridge that particular gap. So one of the proposal is, if we can get this employer absorption pledge, one accredited employer, and there are many of them, Portia, Tulya, Antara, nursing homes, multiple of them, then we would have made a giant leap. The apprenticeship under the NAPS is very much underused in care. I come from engineering background. I've seen apprenticeship establishments. MSDE can actually facilitate this by creating fast track onboarding, any of this. So trying to bridge this NAPS and employer gap could be extremely useful. I mean, then we obviously, like we have seen in software, we have seen in BPO, both are my industries and my earlier avatars. Okay, there is huge scope for India to become, like in the case of software and BPO services, the caregiver for the world. Okay, right? We can become the world's most trusted exporter of caregivers, but we have to build the pipeline systematically, not opportunistically. And panelists have talked about the shortage and what is the urgency and all of that stuff, right? Already we are very close to international standard, the way Indian domestic caregivers are getting trained by professional employers like us, right? They can do it. The gaps, of course, we have discussed are language, cultural orientation, certification, legibility, and all of that stuff. But I'm extremely bullish. Leapfrog the language requirement. Instantly, as I'm speaking, I can actually have AI translate this into multiple languages so that all of you, without very little delay, can understand in any language that you want, whatever I speak. So I think with smartphones and language training, it's great if you can train people in Japanese and German and all that stuff. But we'll not be able to do that in the short term. But I think AI plus smartphone, instantaneous translation, which we should build vertically and not horizontally. Rather than adding more modules to a single job role, design a tiered career ladder where caregivers can advance. It will make caregiving aspirational. Other panelists have talked about it. That's important. And we have seen this in Portia. Our best performing home caregivers are the ones who can do more than one thing. And the Sector Skill Council qualification packs already allow for role stacking within the NSQF framework. Okay, right? So the ask from MSDE that I have is, can we create an explicit credit accumulation pathway so that level 3 elderly caretaker can add more modules? Wellness, yoga, assistive device operation, digital health documents, especially valuable. We know Indian traditional wellness system, how well they are. It's a good differentiator, how well it's accepted. Digital health documentation is non-negotiable in today. Caregivers, for instance, using Portia platform, log on to every patient visit using making it aspirational profession, not a default for those who could not find other work. This requires visible functional career ladders and a pay that reflects all. Again, the Sector Skill Council can do a phenomenal job in this. Okay, right? And caregiving subset. When I say caregiving subset, I'm talking about elderly, child, and disability. Is the fastest growing and highest value segment in this. So a structured career pathway with wage bands linked to NSQF levels will attract a higher caliber entrants to this profession, right? And we have seen this in Bihar Foundation, which is a not-for-profit foundation, community healthcare entrepreneurs, tribal women are self-employed micro entrepreneurs, not wage workers. This is an aspirational model for them. Caregivers who are business owners and not servants, not employees. MSDE's entrepreneurship module should be explicitly include care entrepreneurship program. So I will close with 3 concrete commitment or asks, okay, right? Which into apprenticeship and employment roles. I am, as a part of industry in my own company, are happy to work with you, HMCG, SSC, to be able to do that. Okay. Second, fast track the crosswalk of elderly caretaker QPs to ISCO 08 or ESCO standards. We should do it within the next 6 months. If the Home Management and Caregiver Sector Skill Council can take this up, I'd be most happy and supportive of that. And can be linked to Aadhaar and do it in the next 3, 6, 9 months. This single intervention will enable domestic employment, international mobility, and workforce planning simultaneously. I think these are extremely important area, not just for employment, not just for this. It's a huge opportunity for Indian workforce. More importantly, we are solving a global. Thank you very much. Very happy to be part of it and happy to listen to the panelists and work with all of you.
Thank you, Dr. Ganesh. I would now request
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for having me. Thanks to the ministry, our country's leader putting priority for this. I'm part of the industry board as well for the senior care, senior living sector. And just to give you an eagle's eye view, there are close to 150 operators, only going to become 5 times over the next 3 to 5 years. Just as an employer, I alone as Atulya, we hire close to 700 general duty assistants, caregivers, and you can imagine with 150 operators that will only become close to 100,000 over the next 3 to 5 years. So the capacity we are building together will be absorbed only by the geriatric and senior care companies that are coming in the days to come, just to give support for the initiative. Largely, I think today there are very informal caregiver training agencies out there. Other than the traditional competencies, I think today tech has become a caregivers beyond general caretaking to look at how we can train them in use of technology, such as health. Today, most of the medical records are becoming digital. So can we empower them to their activities of daily living between the actual care clinical people and the families? So it's very important for us to train them on communication skills using tech as a platform for facilitation of communication. Third, what are really the emerging skills and specialization? Today, caregivers are largely specialized trainer in false source of strength for them to lean on, because it takes a lot of burden on that young professional to see the one who they have cared for is not going to be there anymore. So we have to prepare them to handle such situations, and it's not going to be easy. So specialization within the caregiver workforce has to start. A conversation needs to happen on those space so that they are ready to handle as they progress in the career. And this could also be seen as an aspiration for them. Maybe they start as a general duty assistant, then they kind of move into a more specialized role, and that will lead to a better salaries and better growths in their careers. And fourth, can we look at building more credibility to the space? Today, most of us unfortunately hire caregivers from different agencies, formal, informal. Can we look at creating a digital platform for employment where employers, we register the job openings, where we are openly telling how many jobs I have in Chennai, how many jobs I have in Bangalore, how many I have in Pune, so that there is a very clear transparency in the opportunities available. Likewise, there should be a platform where caregivers are able to register themselves with their competency certificates from credible agencies where we know that listed GDA is fully verified, and I can just go and give them an opportunity to go work for us. So today it's very informal, it's very difficult for us to struggle while we have a lot of openings, but we don't know where to go. We are constantly make mistakes in hiring from informal agencies, and we struggle. So an employment platform would be very, very helpful for accelerating this space, both on the supply and demand side. And third is on the insurance recognition. Today, of course, most of the other clinical services, to my knowledge, gets reimbursed, but caregiving business is such an important aspect when it comes to senior citizen care. With Ayushman Bharat's program accelerating, can we look at how do we integrate reimbursements or coverage of caregiver services as part of the larger insurance modeling, so that that's the only way, unless there is a access to care through financial access, it will really be difficult today. See, for example, our each facility is close to a 100-bed facility, will require 100 caretakers. But on a long-term period, the elders will not be able to, they do require a 1:1 at times, but it's very difficult for them to pay for this for a long term. So can insurance play a role in supporting senior citizens in the caregiving coverage would be one request. I try to keep it crisp so that respecting the rest of the speakers coming our way. Thank you for the opportunity. I think it's a great step towards accelerating this space.
Thank you very much, Dr. Patrick. I will now call upon Ms. Sumitra Mishra, CEO Mobile Crash, which is a pioneering organization working in childcare, gender and labor, focusing on women in the informal sector and their children. Ms. Mishra, please.
Good afternoon, madam. Good afternoon, all officials and fellow panelists. I will jump straight into the subject for which I've been given this opportunity. It is obvious that there is a clear attention both in the policies of Government of India as well as in the budget statement now, that there is a move towards formalizing and recognizing care economy as a formal sector. And previous speakers have also now explicitly and reinforced that the overall care economy meets a lifespan approach from childcare to youth and adolescents and elderly care, including disability care. It is from the childcare lens that I would like to bring your attention to some policy investments and way forward, because as mobile creches, we've been in the childcare space for more than 50 years now, currently supporting both state governments and other non-governmental organization in running more than 5,000 creches and childcare services for the poor and marginalized communities across standards and quality framework settings for childcare. And we ourselves as an organization train around 3 to 5,000 childcare givers and other supervisors, supervisory cadre in the childcare sector. So in that sense, the one clear ask that I would like to present here is that while we are sharpening the policy attention on the healthcare skilling and the allied services to the 1.5 lakh caregivers, one thing that we can consider is to look at within this 1.5 caregivers, can the ministry, through multiple sector skill council, also look at a target for the childcare workforce? And that would then at least bring some attention to the monitoring of the childcare workforce. And why this? Because again, I mean, science is pointing us towards the evidence of 90% of brain development happening before the age of 6 years. And therefore, the early years are foundational. And it meets the Government of India's vision for Viksit Bharat in terms of preparing the foundational stage. And this links to the national education policy priorities also. But there is a double advantage of focusing on skilled childcare workforce, because good quality care, childcare services on the ground will also enable greater women's workforce participation. And there are plenty of conversations within public policy on that link between good quality childcare and women's workforce now being established. In our own evidence within the country, we've seen that wherever there have been good quality care that is sustained over a period of time, that has unlocked at least 30% of new women to join the workforce. And within existing women being retained and new women joining, it reaches almost 60 to 70% of women in the workforce. So there is a clear case there. And also, if I refer to the Niti Aayog's assessment of meeting Viksit Bharat goals, what is the requirement of the market for childcare services in the country? Niti Aayog proposes around 25 to 30 lakh creches across the country being needed, both publicly funded, private enterprise run, as well as community owned creches. If we take the smallest unit of these creches, then we are already talking of around 60 lakh childcare workers, supervisors that the country requires to meet its domestic need. And therefore, it is very, very opportunistic that the Health Sector Skill Council has recently launched the qualification pack for 3 kinds of childcare workforce job roles: the care worker, the ECD worker, the early childhood development coordinator or associate level, and a childcare entrepreneur. So looking at the spectrum from both employment to enterprise. Now I come to 2 parts to say that if this is an opportunity for us, what can we do immediately to maximize this opportunity? The first thing, and I will request the Ministry of Skill Development to consider this request, that as an interministerial discussion with Ministry of Women and Child Development, we look at mandating or promoting the NSQF job roles for all the Palna creche workers, which is run under the Ministry of Women and Child Development. So that could be one way of ensuring some quality standards in the Palna creches. And the certification comes through the NSDA SAFE framework. Secondly, we can look at MWCD putting out a notification for all privately run, community run creches for its own workforce to undergo the recently launched Health Sector Skill Council courses and be certified. So that's one in terms of the Ministry of Women and Child Development. The second suggestion over here is that Ministry of Labor, Housing and Urban Affairs, Rural Development and Panchayati Raj, and multiple other ministries also run childcare services. So recommendation from the Ministry of Skill Development to go to all of these ministries to make certification under the NSDC qualification pack as a mandate for these job roles. And this is not simply to drive up the numbers. I'm saying this because this is about very young children under 6 years, children under 3 years, where safety and quality of services to sustain the childcare economy or the childcare sector is extremely important as we're beginning to look at some precursors for formalizing this sector. Related to this, I would also like to suggest that the existing Anganwadi workers and Anganwadi helpers, there was a reference to Asha workers and Anganwadi workers earlier. Again, not to drive the numbers, but simply to bring some kind of formalization to a very, very informal, invisible childcare sector. These could be another segment of workers who are already in the system, but highly invisible, to gain certification and look at career progression. The third point that I would like to make here is that the budget statement this year has also provided tax incentive to corporates who are providing on-site creches. Again, this is for MSDE to consider having a conversation with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs to say that any company that is providing on-site creches through their vendors must at least guarantee that the workforce is certified through the NSQF qualification pack to bring parity in the eligibility condition and in the certification, and therefore some quality standards to the creches that is being run in this country. That's something that is low hanging, that is possible to do right away, madam. In terms of the bigger picture, as we are moving forward, quickly, I have 3 things to submit over here, and many of these suggestions you've already heard. Number 1, to work on the training infrastructure. If the health care jobs training infrastructure is minimal, please imagine that the child care jobs and the training infrastructure is negligible, and it is very ad hoc and extremely informal. I'm happy that Mobile Creches is partnering with the Health Sector Skill Council to create some kind of training infrastructure, some standards of trainers, and the continuous support to the trainers in this sector. So the training infrastructure needs policy attention, needs long-term investment to set it up in the country. The second recommendation I would like to make over here is the childcare entrepreneur. We all want to support enterprises and care entrepreneurship, especially in the childcare sector. But without market linkages, without access to credit, particularly for the childcare enterprises, without a registration of care services in some kind of a portal that guarantees some minimal standards of quality, we would leave the burden of successful childcare enterprises on women mostly, and mostly middle income, low income women, and that would be informal. We would set up ourselves without putting the enabling conditions in place. We would set ourselves to fail to say 5 years later that childcare entrepreneurship doesn't work in this country. So some safeguards are required. The last point that I'll make is again something that my co-panelists have mentioned, is the dignity towards care job, particularly dignity towards childcare job. Childcare has been highly feminized. It has been a family practice, and we know that. So how do we raise the professionalism of the childcare cadre? Basically, 3 quick things: large scale public messaging to make care work aspirational, focusing equally on childcare work, and to make care work gender transformative. This is not just a woman's job. Care jobs can be done by men and women, including childcare jobs. Secondly, to incentivize skilling. Other panelists have spoken. Why would an untrained nanny who's hired in a home come for a skilling if the wages and the career progression is not mapped out? And therefore, to have the incentive mechanism for all of us to deliberate on the incentive mechanism. And the third thing that I will say that to look at a childcare workers registry, the registry has been mentioned. So respect by creating role models for childcare jobs, remuneration by raising the bar of care jobs, and recognition through their entry into a national registry, which then tracks subsequent trainings and refresher courses and recertification will be important. I'll end by saying that the domestic demand for childcare currently in India is quite high. If we try and put some building blocks in organizing this domestic demand, it will automatically create us a pipeline to look at a supply into the overseas market. With that, I would like to thank you again for this opportunity, and thanks a lot.
I would request Mr. Rajat Mehta, Managing Director and CEO, Antara Senior Care, to share his thoughts.
Namaste, everybody. Indeed, very heartening to see these deliberations organized by the Ministry of Skill and Development. I think India is indeed going through a social and demographic, transition. The number that really caught my attention was that 19,500 Indians turn 60 every day. That's 1 every 4.4 seconds. So soon we'll have crores of seniors, and I don't know where this caregiving capacity will come from. What makes this further, imperative is the fact that our traditional care systems of joint family care, community care have all broken down, at least in the top 30 urban cities. We have also noticed a subtle shift in the needs of seniors, particularly after COVID. There is larger acceptability of senior living communities, special facilities for assisted living. Therefore, the need for these caregiving, staff is going to only go up in the next few years. My first suggestion is we need to segment the competencies and skills required, because while there is commonality, the skills required for end-of-life care, palliative care, memory care, and long-term care are quite distinct. So we need to segment these so we are able to develop the training programs and certifications accordingly. While it is commonly understood that all seniors want the care to be firstly in the comfortable environment of their home, but that sector is quite fragmented, unorganized. And that makes it a challenge in terms of consistency and quality. One way of quickly organizing this would be to introduce the minimum standards already drafted by the Healthcare Sector Skills Council, certification and recognition to be part of government policies, rules and regulations, and some incentives which will quickly organize the sector. There is already one example of a company called Snabit, which is now organizing domestic staff. The same example can be applied to caregiving staff, at home. The Healthcare Sector Skills Council already has training modules which cover a range of skills for elderly care. At Antara, we also deploy such a program called Samarth. It's important that all these recognitions, and especially the recognition of prior learning, become formal. We can create models of ease of, doing skilling, modular structures, reasonable fees, and we can encourage the industry to hire such workforce with these certifications. I think inclusion of these in all government policies, rules, and regulations will further strengthen the need for professionally trained caregivers, because my fear is that today this fragmented workforce may be doing more harm than good, to our senior citizens. And this needs urgent attention. I will underscore the point Dr. Karthik made that insurance so far in India has only looked at acute care and episodic care, but recognition that seniors require a lot more chronic disease management, and recognizing the fact that caregiving, whether in the home setting or in specialized facilities or senior communities, also should be able to, attract insurance. That will be a big, push to the entire sector. So therefore, I think a combination of insurance, certification, standards, and encouraging, industry to recruit such people so that they have career paths would be, I think, important for us to augment the caregiving capacity, in India. That's all I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Alexander Thomas, founding member of Vikas. Dr. Thomas, are you there?
I'm here. Yeah, thank you. I'll just address two areas of importance. I think a lot of things have been mentioned, and I won't try and not repeat it. Traditionally, elder care in India has been provided by the families, within the families. However, with the present urbanization, migration, and smaller family structures, families increasingly need trained support within the community. So this actually develops an opportunity to develop caregiving as a structured and respected, and I'll come back to that, respected profession. So to achieve this skilling progress, in my view, should focus on three important events. First, and very important, professional and standardized training. It must be recognized, caregiving must be recognized as a skilled profession rather than informal work. And I think training programs should follow national standards. I work with the Health Sector Skill Council, and I know that the standards are very high. So I think it should be developed and follow the standards set by the Health Sector Skill Council under the National Skills Qualification Framework. Incidentally, as one of the earlier speakers was mentioning about the need for programs, the Sector Skill Council, we can create programs, and there are either already programs, or we can look at palliative caregiver, geriatric caregiver, dementia provider, child caregiver, etc., and Alzheimer's caregiver. These are very common uh, areas that there is a need, but it's important to define the caregiving, to differentiate health caregivers, and for clarity among the patients and the end users. And as mentioned earlier, and I'll repeat it because it's important, they should not only include the basic geriatric care, but also communication skills, mental health support, nutrition, rehab support, and the use of assisted devices. Certification and structured career pathways will definitely help in elevating caregiving to a recognized profession. The second point I want to make is that caregivers should ideally be trained within their own communities and linked to social service delivery. This will make a big difference. Platforms like self-help groups, Anganwadi networks, and local NGOs can help identify these candidates, particularly women, and support them in providing services close to home. I also work with organization called Vaya Vikas, and we work in the area of healthy aging and senior citizen welfare. And we have been exactly advocating for this kind of community-based elder care model. In fact, along with HSSC, we have almost finalized a model for the family caregiver, which is, I think, which will become very useful. This came as a request from the caregivers, and I think this will make a difference. So where trained caregivers, including family members, support older persons within their own neighborhoods, within their own families. At the same time, the non-family caregivers, for them, it is creating a meaningful livelihood opportunity. Third, and I think this is very important, and I think most of us miss this, recognition and career progression are absolutely essential. If you look at today, respect is not there, dignity is not there, and caregivers, especially the senior citizens, burn out within a year or two. Through organizations like the HSSC, when caregivers receive formal certification, fair compensation, this is also important, fair compensation, they should make sure that they're not exploited, and opportunities to advance into specialized or supervisory roles. This is something that HSSC gives as a career progression, and I think this has to be factored in. Otherwise, we may solve the problem for a year or two, and after that, there will be issues. So when you do all this, a profession naturally gains respect. While caregiving is a professionally trained, community-based, and socially recognized, it can become dignified, and I want to underline the word dignified, and aspirational livelihood option, particularly for the women and those. The second few minutes I'd like to talk in is how can we work together. My area of interest has been networking both with governments and other organizations, and I know that this is the only way things would work. So how can this ambitious project announced by our Prime Minister, how can it actually be implemented? How can the government schemes, skill councils, and private sector partners work together? This will require, for this mammoth project to succeed, this will require strong collaboration between government, skill institutions, healthcare providers, and community organizations. First, the government's role is to create the enabling framework. Ministries like the ministries here, the skill development, health, women and child development, rural development, they have to look at integrating caregiving training into existing schemes so that we can use what is there. Government programs can support training certification, and placement systems while ensuring consistent standards. And I think this is very important. Consistent standards across the country. And I would like to include, as I mentioned earlier, career progression. Thirdly, the private healthcare sector must be actively involved. I've been privileged to work with the government of Karnataka and also at the national level, and the outcomes in a public-private partnership have gone up 10x, and we have actually impacted millions in Karnataka, and I think that's the way to go forward. Hospitals, rehabilitation centers, home healthcare providers, and elder care facilities can save us training and apprenticeship centers, this was mentioned earlier, giving caregivers practical exposure and employment opportunities. Community organizations have an important role to play. As I mentioned, via Vikas, which focuses on healthy aging, we can develop community-based elder care models. Raising awareness about the needs of senior citizens also is important. And then we link trained caregivers with families that require support. Finally, this was mentioned, digital platforms can help connect trained caregivers with households that need services while also enabling monitoring, certification tracking, and continuing education. With the government, when government policy supports standardized skill development, private sector participation, and community initiatives such as Vaya Vikas, if we all work together, I have no doubt that India can build a strong caregiving workforce that supports the aging population while creating a large-scale employment opportunities across the country. And I'm sure that with all of us together, this magnificent scheme will benefit not only the caregivers but also those needing care. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. I would now request Dr. Sunil Kumar, Director, Institute of Palliative Sciences, Trivandrum, to please share his thoughts.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. So I would like to start with a simple thought.
But it will not get wrong.
Am I audible?
Yes.
So I would like to start with a simple thought that healthcare is not only about saving lives, it is also about relieving suffering. And palliative care focuses on relieving the serious health-related suffering caused by conditions such as advanced heart disease, chronic lung disease, neurological disorders, kidney failure, severe frailty in the elderly, cancer, and many other illnesses that causes significant physical and emotional distress. In India, the need of such care is growing rapidly due to aging population and the increasing burden of chronic diseases. At Pallium India, we see this reality every day through our clinical services and community programs. And I would like to share a brief story. We once cared for an elderly woman with an advanced heart failure who was bedridden and approaching the end of her life. Her daughter was her primary caregiver, but she was overwhelmed. She did not know how to position her mother, how to manage her breathlessness, or how to make her comfortable. A caregiver trained through Pallium India began visiting the home. She helped with positioning, hygiene, feeding, and monitoring symptoms. More importantly, she reassured the family and showed them. Her daughter later told us that without the trained caregiver, she would have to rush her mother to the hospital in panic, so the patient could die in dignity. That story reminds us of an important truth that in serious illness, families need not only medicines, they need hands that care and hearts that understand. And despite the growing need, access to palliative care in India remains very limited. There are several challenges. There are very few specialized palliative care centers, especially outside major cities. There is also a shortage of trained palliative care professionals, and awareness about palliative care among healthcare providers and families remains limited. Another challenge is that palliative care is not yet fully integrated into mainstream healthcare systems. Many patients experiencing serious health-related suffering do not timely receive it. But perhaps the most critical gap is the lack of trained caregiving workforce. Families often depend on untrained helpers who may be willing to assist but do not have the knowledge needed to safely care for patients, whether it is mobility support, hygiene, feeding, symptom observation, or handling medical equipments. At the same time, caregiving as a profession often lacks recognition, career pathways, and social protection, which discourages young people from entering this field. And yet the reality is clear. Doctors and nurses cannot do this alone. Compassionate care requires trained caregiving workforce. So how can we move forward? One practical solution is the development of structured skilling programs that train community members as multi-skilled caregivers. These programs are not meant for doctors or nurses. It is for ordinary individuals to provide essential caregiving support under professional supervision. And these forces can be trained in competencies for geriatric care, palliative care, home and institutional based care, basic allied health support, and operating medical devices such as oxygen concentrators, hospital beds, wheelchairs, and suction apparatus. This multi-skilling approach is important because patients experiencing serious health-related suffering often have complex and overlapping needs. Encouragingly, a national skills qualification frame aligned qualification for palliative caregivers have recently been developed through Health Sector Skill Council with inputs from experts. Palliative care organizations like Pallium India, which already provide clinical services, training, community outreach, can play a crucial role in training this workforce and ensuring that training reflects real-life caregiving needs. At the same time, we must create aspirational value for caregiving by establishing clear career progression pathways, ensuring better compensation for trained caregivers than the untrained one, improving social security and working conditions, accrediting caregiving organization to maintain service quality, conducting awareness campaigns to attract young people to this meaningful profession. Because ultimately, caregiving should not be seen as an informal help. It is a skilled profession that deserves training, recognition, and dignity. Let me conclude with one reflection. A health system that cannot relieve suffering is an incomplete health system. If we combine structured training, recognized certification, and meaningful career pathways, India can build a strong and sustainable caregiving workforce. Institutions like Pallium India, working together with government and skill development partners, can help make this possible. And when we do this, we move closer to a healthcare system where no person has to live or die in avoidable suffering, and where families feel supported during the most vulnerable moments of life. Thank you for patient listening.
Thank you very much to all our participants and for very, very useful suggestions. We will now move on to the question answer session of our webinar. Now, actually, we've run a little over time, but I don't regret that because the richness, the discussions have been extremely rich, and I think we have come across with very, very strong suggestions. So I have a suggestion. With regard to the question answer session, I'm going to ask the interveners to raise the questions, but I will ask the panelists to put down their response in writing, and we will share it on the group in the interest of time. So if that is okay, we will proceed along these lines, asking our interveners to raise their questions, and thereafter the panelists can sit down, and we will share it across the larger group. Is that does that work? Yeah. Thank you.
So we can share on the WhatsApp group all the responses?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we will. How will we share it?
We have a separate group where all the speakers as well as the interventionists, they are already in that WhatsApp group. So you raise your question and you tell us which of the panelists you would want to respond to that question, and they will send their responses in the WhatsApp group itself. Later on, we will collate these responses and those will also be taken on board. I hope that's fine with everybody.
Sure.
I would now request Mr. Amit Saini, who's Commissioner Skill Development, Employment and Entrepreneurship, Maharashtra, to raise his question.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Dr. Amit Sani. First of all, thank you very much for organizing such an important debate on such an important topic, ma'am. And special thanks for the choice of panelists you have, ma'am, arranged for us. That's very nice. And thanks to the panelists for giving us an insight into such a new topic, ma'am. Actually, it's an old topic, but we have got aware of it now. Ma'am, there's one small request that the name of the panelists with their contact numbers and emails be shared on the group so that we can correctly get in touch with them, because there are many queries in our mind with respect to many things which panelists have discussed today. My limited question is to Georgia, ma'am.
I'll share this along with the contact details so that you can maintain that touch subsequently also.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, that's so important. Thank you very much. Ma'am, my limited question is to Georgia, ma'am, UNICEF. We all know, ma'am, the caregivers are very underpaid, and of course, it's largely undertaken by women. So, if we formalize this care economy, is it going to really benefit economic empowerment of the woman? Is my first. And ma'am has already suggested the RPL way of formalizing it. So is there any other special training or upskillings which required to be done so that these marginalized workers and women in this sector are recognized properly and they have a formal dignity, as we are quietly discussing about it? So thank you very much, ma'am. It's a very limited question.
Thank you. We've taken note of that. Shri Chakravarti Singh Rathore, Director, DTEP, Odisha.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Chakravarti, ma'am. My question is to Mr. K. Ganesh. We have talked a lot about the demand which is there in the market. We have talked about the supply side ecosystem as well. But currently, there's no market which exists which is able to match the demand and supply. If one person today wants a caregiver, it is very difficult for them to find an agency which that can be trusted. So I would request you, based on your experience, if you can suggest a few ideas through which the market can be formalized so that from both demand and supply side, the system, and it will automatically help in organizing the unorganized sector as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Great question. I'll respond to it on the WhatsApp as has been discussed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shri Anup R, Manager, Case, Kerala.
Good afternoon, ma'am. First of all, thank you so much for this opportunity. And due to the limited time, I would like to ask the question to Dr. Sunilkumar sir. Basically, he belongs to Kerala, and myself representing Kerala State Skill Development Mission. So, sir, my question is just like it's covered in caregiving roles, especially in home and palliative care. Are in an unorganized sector, especially in terms of salary and compensation package and working conditions and all. So you having your extensive experience in this field, how we can solve this some kind of exploitation in terms of salary, and how we can identify verified job roles. In the presentation you were mentioning like NSQF and all. And for the few years being State Skill Development Mission, we are engaged with some industry partners and Sector Skill Council and Kudumbashree like training. So from that experience, there are some kind of exploitation is happening. So how we can solve that issue in a positive sense? That's my question, ma'am.
Okay, shall respond in the WhatsApp too.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Ms. Mona Gupta, Head of Nursing Education, Bangalore Hospice Trust, Head of Nursing. Ms. Mona Gupta, CEO, Home Management and Caregivers, SSC.
Yeah, good afternoon to the August gathering here. My question is based on the varied and in-depth inputs that have been received from all the participants. It is specifically also addressed to Dr. Alexandra Thomas and any state government heads that are also present here. While we are looking at 1.5 lakh caregivers, we also know that 70% of India lives in our villages. How do we plan to bridge the gap for affordable and accessible elderly caregiving and allied care for rural India? Additionally, how can a dedicated channel specifically for rural regions be created who have been so far depending on familial care, but family migrations have led to the absence of this situation right now, so that increased longevity translates into a life led with care and dignity, and also addressing women participation in labor force, which releases, as one of the esteemed panelists mentioned, about 30% of the workforce for our GDP. Thank you.
Prashant
Yeah,
Dharmarajan,
we'll respond on
Assistant.
that. Thank you for the question. Very important points. I'll respond on the email, on the link. Thank you.
Thank you.
I next request Dr. Prashant Dharmarajan, Assistant Professor, All India Institute of Ayurveda, to raise his question.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Respected Madam team and all the dignified audience here. Sir, my question is to Dr. Rajat, sir. We know that Ayush is one of the most important player in the skill programs that's there in India. And Ayush has the principles of holistic wellness and India's traditional health system, which has a significant potential to strengthen the community health services, elderly care, and evidence-based management of chronic diseases. So, based on this background, I have two questions, madam. One is integration of traditional wellness systems. How can traditional wellness systems such as Ayurveda and yoga can be systematically incorporated into caregiver training programs to support holistic and person-centered care for elderly individuals, particularly within the organized senior living communities? Second one is strengthening the skill ecosystem. How can a national skilling ecosystem collaborate with Ayush institutions to design specialized training modules that effectively combine modern caregiving competencies with traditional wellness approaches, thereby creating a new generation of integrative caregivers, which are the need for this time? So these are the two questions which I have.
Thank you. Great question. We're already doing something on this. I'll answer it.
I would next move to Ms. Anshu Verma, AGM Healthcare SSC, to raise her question.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the opportunity to the respected gathering over here. Definitely hearing this webinar since morning, there are targeted interventions which are needed across four key important pillars, which are very, very clear in front of the eyes, starting with expanding the training capacity to making caregiving an aspirational profession, enhancing opportunities, and also strengthening financing and service integration. With this, I have questions which I would like to put up with Mr. Sandeep Kumar Sodexo. So, sir, from your experience being an industry as a recruitment agency, what are the key skills which you often find difficult to find in a person to say that the person is work ready professional or work ready caregiver, and how can the healthcare organizations, especially the private providers, can come with the government to strengthen training, on the job exposure, and industry readiness of caregivers? So two perspectives, sir, is about that what are the key skills which from the training aspect needs to be integrated so that we have work ready professionals and it is easier for the industry to hire them, and also then what are how industry and the government can work together to create that capacity. The second question I would request if Mr. Bharat Vishwaria sir could address is from the financing perspective, because the people we are catering to, the caregiver, they come from a very humble background. With that humble background, they often find difficulty in paying the fee for them. So what are the financials model can be explored in terms of the framework or support mechanism that could help and ensure that the aspiring candidate, especially from the modest background, can access these opportunities in the care sector and can help address the shortage as well as come up with aspirational higher values into this thing. Thank you for the opportunity. We look forward to work on this. Thank you.
So I hope Dr. Singh and Dr. Vishwaria have taken note of that. I will move to Sri Suhas Deshmukh, Director at NCVT, to raise this question.
Good afternoon, everyone. My question is to Sri Prashant Bise, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Politics. As of now, we know that there is a global demand for the caregivers, and India is now having a strong pool of the people who can go and do the caregiving activities out of India. So for that purpose, the NCVT is as of now that setting up a standard in many more places, together 57 different sectors. So can we have, my question is like this, can we have an international alignment of those courses so that there will be a smooth mobility, smooth ethics, smooth, all these things can be taken into account? Thank you.
Yes, I think I will reply to this one from our WhatsApp platform.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I would now request Sri Abhishek Gupta to make this question.
Thank you. My question is to you, Madam Secretary. I mean, from a partnerships perspective, what are some, you want to achieve this goal of 1.5 lakh carers? So what are the most critical partnerships that you see from your perspective that are required to achieve this goal?
Thank you for the question. It will require me to distill all the wisdom that we have, sort of gathered through this, but I will respond on the WhatsApp group. Just a quick kind of listening as we wind up. I would, anybody who has been watching this webinar, who have not been part of the structured questioning session, anybody who has a suggestion, anybody who has a question, we have the chat box open. But even thereafter, anybody who wants to put a question on the YouTube stream, we will be happy to pick up the questions and respond. So any questions, any suggestions, I will request people who are part of the webinar or even those who, sort of watch this later. We'd like, a larger, sort of questions, suggestions to come in terms of making this program successful. Thank you.
Then I think somebody has been left out from the question.
Has somebody been left out?
I am here. Oh, I'm so sorry. I left out your question. Please go ahead.
Yeah. I'm Sangeeta from Karunashriya. And it was very nice. Thanks for the wonderful opportunity from morning to listen from all the speakers. In my experience in the daily work with patients and family, I clearly see there is a growing need of skilled caregivers. But Dr. S.P. Singh is, as we aim to rapidly, to scale up the caregiver training, and you are doing a wonderful job, and a lot of trainings are coming in the pipeline. And what strategies can universities or skill institutions adopt to expand this training capacity while ensuring the practical exposure? Here, I want to mention very strongly about the communication skills, compassionate care, and how you have to ensure your caregiver to find out the symptom recognition for the patients, which is very important, what we find the challenges in the practical settings, and how you align these training standards with international requirements. So our Indian caregivers also will get the global employment opportunity. This is the question to you. I have one more question to Dr. Sunil Kumar. Sir, you are the largest workforce training sector in the country. So what is your opinion about a long-term national caregiver framework that integrate the geriatric, palliative care and home-based palliative care? And how you can incorporate all these things by using a structured technology training pathways? That is what I would like to ask you from the Pallium to create a dignified, as Dr. Alexander rightly mentioned, and have a sustainable career opportunities for caregivers, both within the country as well as a global network. This is what my question. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. I have noted and recorded also. I will respond to you on the WhatsApp, and I will be happy.
Or raise questions. or raise questions, kindly use that QR code and communicate with us. Thank you very much all for your participation. We will be joining again, ma'am, at 3:30, wherein all the summation of the 7 breakout sessions, it will be given by Dr. V.K. Paul, Honorable Member Health in the NITI Aayog. And thereafter, that will be followed by the closing remarks by the Honorable Minister of Public Industries. So I would request all of you to join back at 3:30 for the continuation of this program.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Bye.